Hi, my name is Jesse, and this is my first tutorial. There's a lot of stuff out there that I've really had problems trying to decipher, and I appreciate everyone putting their tutorials on the net for me to go through and research, try to figure out how to do this thing. And my goal was to make weapons and armor and stuff like that, and really just get in there, immerse myself into Oblivion. So I'm gonna get started. This is not very good quality, I know, but the video is just mostly for visual reference, and then you have me talking as well, kind of guide you through it. First thing, we're going to try to set up the environment here. After you install Oblivion, you're going to go into the Oblivion game folder. You'll see a folder called Data, and inside the Data folder, you want to make one folder that says meshes and one that says textures, and inside those folders you're going to put weapon and then the name of your armor. So it's going to be the data folder, then it's going to be mesh folder, weapon folder, and the name of your armor weapon folder. That's kind of complicated, I know you can't really see it, and there are some real simple tutorials on the internet, but that's basically how it goes. You're going to have one for the mesh and one for the textures. Here we are. I'm going to go ahead and open up 3D Studio Max. The plugin has already been installed, and that is the NifTools Max plugin. You can get 3D Studio Max trial version, 30-day trial version, and it does the same thing. Using BSA Commander, I unencrypted or decrypted the BSA file that comes with Oblivion, and inside that file you have a bunch of NIF files, which are the meshes, which is 3D information that you import into 3D Studio Max. And what we're going to do is going to take a standard sword. It's a two-handed steel long blade, and we're going to import that into 3D Studio Max just for a frame of reference to get started with. So, and the reason for that is because most games, they have their own scale, and we could create a weapon that was way too big or way too small. And as you'll see later on, as we get into it, that the scale, we're going to have to scale it down just a little bit, but that's in tweaking in the end. Right now, what I did, I opened up the NIF file, imported it, and I turned off import bones and import collision data, because all I need is the visual reference. I went in there, I'm going in there, selecting, once I put a handle where the sword was, I went in there and selected that sword mesh and hit it. And still I can see the, I got the guidelines there to tell me how long the sword was. So what I did, I created a simple cylinder, and now I'm creating a box, just a square box. I'm going to go back in there here in a second, center the square box on the cylinder. The cylinder is going to be my handle, and the box is going to be the sword blade itself. Very simple mesh I'm creating just to demonstrate the abilities of making swords and stuff like that, and then import them into the game. You can also go on the internet and download various free 3D meshes and do the same thing, import them into the game. A good place for that is turbosquid.com. They have a lot of free meshes. What I did right now, I selected the square of the box and the handle. I'm not sure if I did that yet or not, but what I'm doing, I'm extruding. I cut the box into 3 segments. I'm grabbing 2 of the segments and extruding them out a little bit, and then extrude them out a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is shrink it down so it's flat, the extruded faces, and then I'm going to extrude out even more for the whole length of the blade there. So I kind of have, if you look in the top left view, it's kind of shaky and stuff. I have a beginning of a sword. I just got to extrude it one more time and then grab the vertices, push them together or shrink them, and bring it to a point on the end. what I'm doing is I'm making a two-bladed sword, something a little bit different. That way when we open it up in Oblivion, you'll see exactly what you can do. Now, I got two blades, there's space between the blades, and you'll be able to see through that. So with that in mind, later on, if you wanted to make a blade that just had pieces missing, or transparent portions, you can do that very easily. Like I said, this is kind of just a visual reference and a little bit of talk through. So if you already have a knowledge, you should be able to look at this and pick up on what I'm doing pretty easily. And there are plenty of tutorials out there for 3D Studio Max and Photoshop, which we'll be using also, and other stuff like that. One of the things that we're also going to be doing is, once I create the mesh, which is what you're going to want to do first, and then you're going to want to worry about how you're going to paint it, and that's what we're going to do in here. We're going to create the mesh and then paint the mesh using Photoshop, and it's a pretty simple. I mean, once you do it a couple times, it gets easier. Using UV unwrap. Okay, here I just connected the two. I selected the handle. I went over, converted it to a mesh, converted both pieces to mesh, opened up the edible mesh icon, and I click attach, and then I clicked on the sword, so that the handle and the sword are one mesh now. And I think what I'm going to do now is apply a modifier. Select my entire mesh. It's just clicking on it on the mesh anywhere. Apply a modifier of UV unwrap, or unwrap UV. Yep. Select, click on the drop down, click faces, and then hit Control A, which selects all the faces on the weapon. Scroll down and hit edit, and this makes no sense. So to make sense of what we have selected, you go up to mapping and then flatten map, and it takes all your flat surfaces and spreads them out pretty evenly for you, so that you kind of have a general idea of what you're looking at and where you want to map this. Now what we're going to do is going to export this file. We're going to save it. I think it's in Tools. If you go over to nope, there it is, Render UV map, UVW map template. You hit that, hit Render UV template. It opens up another window, and there's your template. It looks just like your map does. Save that in a raw data folder, or into your folders that you created for your actual files, and then go down to Save As type and change that to JPEG. And what I did, I'm actually going into the folder that I created just for this, and it's the mesh, I mean not the mesh folder, but the texture folder. So you can have a mesh folder and the texture folder for your weapon, and those are going to be saved in according to the folders. I know I probably sound like an idiot. I've never done this before, no kind of video or audio tutorials, and I just felt like I wanted to add my part, contribute to the thing. Okay, now once you do that, you want to go and save the Max file. Actually just save it as a 3D Studio Max file, so you can come back and edit it later. Once you save that, you can close this now that we have our map. Go ahead and open Photoshop, open that JPEG file, which is in that folder that I had mentioned earlier under textures, and you open it up. There it is, voila. And all this is an outline that you can draw within. If you whatever you draw within those green lines, that's going to be portrayed on your mesh as that section of your mesh. So we know this is a double-bladed sword. You see there, here in a second, you'll be able to see what I'm doing now is just I'm hitting Control J, copying the mesh so I don't mess up. You have your handles there. You got the backs of your handles, and then whatever I want my handle to look like, I'm going to paint inside there. And what I'm doing now is actually I'm getting rid of those white lines. So I just want to keep my green lines and use that as a reference to draw within. And just using my magic tool, I select the white lines and hit delete, and it gets rid of all the white lines on the page. And there you have it. Now I can use my magic tool again, select within each, turn my tolerance down a little bit, select within each portion, and I can edit within each portion easily, which you'll see here in a second when I finally figure that I need to flatten this mesh or level it down to the next level. Yes, I was struggling. There it is. Sample all layers. Okay. Now I can click within each circle, and it'll give me, it'll select just that portion of the weapon that I want to modify, which is good because I can use that to create different layers for each section if I want to, which I do, but you don't necessarily have to. Actually, I'm going to make it real easy. What we're going to do is we're going to select a side here, so that the side's selected. Go to gradient, choose a gradient color, and choose how I want this to radiate. And then if I drag and click within the selected portion, you'll see it actually radiates. Very nice. Gradually changing color from dark to light. I didn't really like that, but either way, that's how you do it. I'm going to skip forward a little bit. There you go. I have my sword. I have my meshes. All I did was do a Google search for some carbon fiber, drug that, dropped it over all the handles because I don't need the green lines. Those are just reference. Whatever's over the green lines, that's what's going to show up in that area. So I knew those circles were for my handle. See my blades here? I just took and radiated them, or gradiated, and then on the blades I used the text editor or the text queue and went down there and wrote a little text in there. And you see I have mine all separated into layers. Very easy. Now what we're going to do to export this, I'm going to flatten the image. And what you can do is save it, save the PSD file, Photoshop file, so you can come back and edit it later. Edit the just the level or layer that you want to edit without going through the hassle of trying to edit each piece manually. So I save the PSD file, and then what we're going to do is go and save the PSD file. Okay, with all my layers. Then we're going to go and flatten this file. We'll flatten the file, then we'll get into exporting the file. What we're going to do is basically flatten it, export it as a DDS file using the exporter. Then we're going to take the same image and apply mapping normal filter. There it is. Go down. I have the plugin installed. It's a plugin for DDS by NVIDIA, which I posted all the links to this stuff. I use DX3. Everything else can pretty much stay the same. Just make sure generating bitmaps is turned on. Save the file, and I saved it into my textures folder. Textures and then weapons name folder. So I take the same file, I go up to filter, I go down to NVIDIA filters, and there you have the normals. And what this does, in the game, it gives your weapon or mesh a little bit of a 3-dimension to the surface. You can basically leave everything as it is on this page, but the higher the number, the smoother it is. And you can also on that same page turn mapping on, because we are going to be using this picture for mapping a 3D mesh. And there you have that. We're going to save this into the same directory as the other DDS file, and on the name, all we're going to do is put at the end of the name underscore in.dds. So I took and created a file, saved it, make sure mapping's turned on, and I'm going to put underscore in.dds, which will make it easier for the program to pick up as being map. I mean normals. So we have one color map and one normal map. The color map is just the name of your weapon.dds. The normal map is the name of your weapon underscore in.dds. I know, I make things worse than they need to be, more complicated. This video probably is confusing people more than anything. So I'll go back to 3D Studio Max, open up my file that we'd saved earlier, and now what we're going to do is open up our material editor, or go back to unwrap UVW, same thing that we did earlier. Select all of it, go down to edit map, okay, anyways, open up the material editor. We're going to have to drop or select the DDS file. Alright, on the first material, make sure it's set to blend, which it should be automatically right there. Then you go down to diffuse, click the little box next to diffuse, and the little square box next to diffuse will bring up another selection menu. Click on bitmap, it should be the first one. It'll bring up your browser, go to the folder with your picture in it, and then select the color map DDS file. And now we have that. For some reason my mouse wasn't working at this point. I think it has something to do with the screen capture program, but there it is. So we open up the color map DDS file, and it should automatically wrap itself around the ball. Now, since we have the sword selected, we can come down here and apply to selected item, and it's just not that button, but the one to the right of it, and I think I clicked that button anyway. Yeah, close that, go back, and that button applies it. Or you can even go and drag and drop it, drag it and drop it onto the sword itself, and it applies that mesh. Now we have to go back and open the mesh again within your UVW unwrap. So we click that, open it up, the UVW unwrap, and click faces, select all, go down to edit, and you see our picture is not there yet, and it's not in this menu, so we have to open it, which is what I do whenever I go down and hit add texture. Yeah, closed it, and because I forgot what the hell I was doing, material editor, I wanted to make sure that the material was actually on the sword, which I digressed a little bit. You won't have to do that, hopefully, maybe through trial and error. Select it, hit Control A to select all the faces, and there I am. It's not there again, so I finally figured out that I need to go up here and load the texture again. So you load it twice. Maybe someone else knows a shorter way, but that's how I had to do it. I loaded it through the material editor, and then I load it through here, and there you have it. If I zoom in a little bit, you'll see that that's the picture that we exported from Photoshop, and it automatically lined itself up to all the faces on our weapon. There, you can close that, and if we hit F9, I'm not sure if I do that, but if we hit F9, it will render. There's our sword with the map installed. So you can actually get a good visual idea of what it's going to look like in the game. Not bad, and it's going to be a little better because it's going to have the normal map file to give it a little surface realism. Okay, now we're going to go back and unhide all our objects because we still have the other sword. There is a frame of reference. It's just hidden. I didn't delete it, which we could have, since I knew which way the sword was supposed to be pointing and about how big it's supposed to be. And there's the other sword. I just unhid everything. I hit H, it brings up a list of all the items. Click the other sword, so that just the other sword is selected, and hit the delete key. It's gone. Now's a good time. You can save your 3D Studio Max file and do that before you export. Go down to export and change your folder to your mesh folder now this time, and go down to NIF export. And I know I think I have a high def version of this video, but I know that no one's going to want to download 300 megabytes. If you do, shoot me an email, go to my website, you can contact me through my website or whatever, and I'll try to post my high resolution video on my website so that people can download it from there if they want to be able to see all the folders and stuff that I'm creating here, which it's only 2 folders created, a mesh folder and a texture folder, and then you have your weapons folder inside those. One holds your mesh, one holds your textures. It's pretty simple. The program will actually what is it? The NifSkope program will actually detect where your meshes are and textures are, as long as they're in the right folders. So here I am. I turned off collision, export collision data, and because all we need to do is export the mesh itself. Alright, close that out. Good. Saved it. Now I have a NIF file. Open NifSkope, load, and I go into my folder, my weapon folder, and I have 2. I have the original longsword there, and I have the file that I just exported from 3D Studio Max. I'm going to import the file from 3D Studio Max. You see there, that's where the texture line is, and there you see my file, my sword with the textures added and everything. That little purple flower down there is the folder that your texture is in. So there's that sword just moving it around and stuff. Make sure everything looks like it's lined up and touching. Pretty simple. Basically what we're going to do is right click the NifSkopes, which is your mesh data texture information for your sword. Right click it, go to block, and then copy branch. Now you can close it or just open up the new one. And what we're going to do is I copied that branch. I'm going to open up the longsword file, and what I did on this tutorial was to go to new window and open the original frame of reference longsword file, which is I had put into the same folder, and open that. Then I'm going to right click anywhere under the main under the parent branch there. You see there's the mesh for the original file. If you go over and click that mesh and hit delete, go to right click the file that it highlights and go to block and remove branch, because we don't want that mesh, we want our mesh. And then right click down there on the bottom somewhere, you see 14. I have I hit block and paste branch, so I put 14 is mine. Well, you can't see it really, but I removed their branch and pasted mine, basically replacing their mesh with my mesh. And then what you have to do is go to the parent, come down here, and you see where it says child. I have to put the number that my mesh was, which was 14 or 13. So whenever I pasted, when I pasted my mesh into that tree view there, it gave it a number, and I just had to go up to the parent and change that number from 8 to 13 because 8 was the original mesh. A little complicated. There are tutorials specifically for this. It'll give you a little more information on exactly what I did. So now I'm just saving the NIF, and I'm going to overwrite the file that we exported earlier. So my blade. Now we're going to open up, let's see, Oblivion construction set, which I provided links to. open up the main data file. It takes a few minutes to load up, and then once that file is open, you go to weapons, and we're going to make a new weapon. Go down to any two-handed longsword, which I just went down to steel two-handed longsword. On the right, you'll see it tells you whether it's two-handed, one-handed, blunt, two-handed, bow, stuff like that. I picked any two-handed long, and double-click that. It brings up your edit menu. Change the ID reference to something like BA my sword, which stands for badass. And then I change the name, which, you know, my sword. And you're going to want to make sure you do this, change the ID and the name. If you don't, and you change the NIF, all of your files will, and all the steel swords in the game will look like your sword. So I went over and changed the NIF file, browsed to the folder that has my mesh that I created, my sword mesh, and upload that. Now that you can change DDS, you can also change the icon if you want to. You don't need to. I left the same icon there. Just for giggles, I'm changing the damage, something really crazy like 20,000, just so I make sure that my weapon, the one I selected, if the mesh isn't there, at least I know that this portion of the program is working. And I save it, asks me if I want to form a new ID, yes, and then the folder that I had saved my file in actually shows up on the left here, which was my sword. I go down to M's for my sword, and there it is. I'm going to open up a form ID for the sword I created and write that number down. It's right next to the name. Just slide it over, and you'll be able to see the form ID. And this is for testing it in the game. You write that form ID down, and there are command lined syntax that you can use to actually just put that sword right into your inventory from wherever you're at in the game, which we'll talk about here in a second. I know this is a very long tutorial, and I just kind of wanted to walk everyone through it. I would like to have had this tutorial or something similar to it. Maybe someone who did a better tutorial, who could do a better tutorial than me, do this. So I saved it and closed it. Now I opened up my game. I hit the tilde key, and it'll bring up a little command line menu. I put player.add-item space, and then I write that object reference ID. I type that in there, 0010 or something like that, space and a 1, and then hit enter, and there it is, my blade in my inventory. And that was, and there's a link to all those command line commands also on my tutorial. So there it is, my blade. You see the stats. What I'm gonna do is click on it, and boom, it's in my hand. It's a little off. I need to move the reference or the sword up a little bit in 3D Studio Max and do the resave procedures, but maybe even make it a little smaller. It's really big right now, but there you have it. Huge double-bladed sword. My hand's kind of going through the handle a little bit, but those are just tweaks that you can go back and tweak it later on. There's a close-up a little bit, and I'm going to skip forward to something that I did, which you can do later on using a torch mesh and adding it with the sword mesh in NifSkope itself. Anybody has any questions, they can contact me, and I'll show them how I did this too. And it actually turned out really good. I tweaked my sword a lot. I changed the texture, make it look a little cooler, and there you have it, flaming sword. My frame per second is really slow, so you can't really tell, but it's a very nice flaming double-bladed sword, and there I am swinging it, and flames and sparks are flying everywhere, and you can do the same thing. So stick with it. If you got any questions, please contact me at picturebandit.com.